Hello, everyone, and welcome. If you're tackling the UGC Net/JRF exam, you know postcolonialism is a beast of a topic. Well, in this explainer, we are going to crack it wide open and give you the strategic edge you absolutely need. So, let's start with a number that should really make you sit up and pay attention. 12 to 15. That's right, that's roughly how many questions on paper 2 are connected, one way or another, to postcolonialism. This isn't just some small topic you can skim. Mastering this is your ticket to a seriously high score.
All right, here's our game plan. First, we'll talk about why this topic is such a big deal for the exam. Then, we'll get to know the key thinkers, dive into the literature, and arm you with the must-know vocabulary. And we'll wrap it all up with a solid strategy for dealing with those tricky exam questions.
Okay, first up, let's really establish why this topic matters so much. It's not just another unit on the syllabus, it's much, much more than that. You've got to think of postcolonialism as a kind of master key. You know, a concept like Edward Said's contrapuntal reading doesn't just answer a question in the theory unit. No, it completely changes how you analyze a British novel in Unit 1 or an Indian novel in Unit 3. It connects the dots across the entire syllabus, which makes it an incredibly high-yield area to focus your studies on.
Right, now let's get into the heavy hitters, the architects of postcolonial thought. These are the theorists you just have to know. Their ideas are the bedrock of the entire field. So, Said, Bhabha, and Spivak. They're often called the postcolonial trinity, but we really have to begin with their crucial forerunner, Frantz Fanon. His work on the psychology of colonialism really set the stage for everything that came after. Let's break down their core ideas one by one.
Edward Said's book, Orientalism, it was a complete game changer. His big argument was that the West basically invented this idea of the Orient, this exotic, backward, mysterious place. And it wasn't because that's what it was really like. It was a story the West told itself to make colonialism seem like a good idea. This concept is a huge favorite for matching questions, so make sure you've got it down. And this is Said's method in action. He asks us to read a novel, like Jane Austen's Mansfield Park, with a kind of double vision. On the surface, you see this polite, elegant English country life. But Said shows us that if you look just beneath the surface, you see that all that elegance is paid for by a brutal slave plantation in Antigua. It's a really powerful way of exposing the hidden imperial histories within these classic texts. Now, Homi Bhabha does something fascinating. He flips the script and focuses on the anxiety of the colonizer. His key idea here is mimicry. Imagine a colonial subject who tries to be perfectly British. The result is always almost the same, but not quite. And that slight difference, that imperfect copy, actually becomes a form of mockery. It rattles colonial authority right from the inside. Then we have Gayatri Spivak, who asks this absolutely devastating question: can the subaltern speak? By subaltern, she means the people on the absolute margins of society. She uses the historical example of Sati in India, where a widow was burned on her husband's pyre. The British colonizers said, we must save her. The local patriarchy said she must die for tradition. And in that whole debate between these two powerful groups, the woman's own voice is completely, totally erased. She's doubly silenced. And we circle back to Frantz Fanon, whose work is just foundational. In his book, Black Skin, White Masks, he shows how colonialism isn't just a political or economic system. It gets inside your head. It creates a deep-seated inferiority complex in the colonized person. So for Fanon, decolonization had to be more than just political. It had to be this intense, even violent, psychological process of cleansing the mind.
Okay, so we've got the theory. Now let's see how all of this actually shows up in literature. How did writers from around the world push back against empire with their stories?
Now, this is a super important distinction that the exam loves. You've got to know the difference. In settler colonies like Australia or Canada, the literature is often about feeling out of place, a sense of unhomeliness on stolen land. But in non-settler colonies, like Nigeria or India, the focus is much more on fighting back, on decolonization, and on reclaiming cultures that were almost wiped out.
Oh, this is a classic exam topic, the great language debate between two giants of African literature. You had Chinua Achebe on one side, who made a pragmatic argument. He said, basically, let's take English and bend it to our will. Let's make it carry the weight of our African experience. But then you had Ngugi wa Thiong'o, who took a much more radical stance. He said a firm farewell to English, arguing that to truly decolonize the mind, you had to return to your native language. You know the exam loves chronology questions, so this is a crucial slide. But don't just memorize the dates. Try to see the story it tells. You can see how it starts with this powerful literary statement from Ashibe. Then theory just explodes onto the scene with Said. And then that theory fuels this incredible new wave of creative work from writers like Rushdie. It's the evolution of an entire movement. This idea of writing back to the empire is one of the most powerful things post-colonial writers do. So Achebe hears the West call Africa the Dark Continent, and he writes back with a rich, complex portrait of Igbo society. Rushdie takes the English language and chutneyfies it, mixing it all up to tell the chaotic, magical story of India's birth. And Jean Rhys takes a minor, silenced character from Jane Eyre and gives her a whole heartbreaking history of her own. It's just brilliant.
All right, time for a rapid-fire round. We're going to build up your vocabulary with some essential keywords. These are terms you are very likely to see in the theory section, so let's lock them in. Okay, let's nail these down. Neocolonialism, that's just colonialism 2.0. It's economic and cultural control, not direct political rule. Strategic essentialism is a political tactic, when different groups temporarily unite under one label, like indigenous people, to fight for a common goal. Abrogation and appropriation are a pair. Abrogation is rejecting the colonizer's standard English, while appropriation is taking that English and remaking it to fit your own culture. And finally, diaspora, which is all about communities of people living far from their ancestral homeland. Okay, let's put everything we've learned into practice. It's time to talk strategy. We're going to break down those assertion reasoning questions, which can be really tough, but with the right system, you can master them. So you're going to see a question that looks a lot like this. This format is designed to test how you connect ideas, not just whether you know random facts. So how do we tackle it without getting tripped up? I'll show you. Here is your foolproof 3-step method. Follow it every single time. First, look at the assertion on its own. Is it true? Yes or no. Second, look at the reason on its own. Is it true? Yes or no. And only if you've answered yes to both do you move on to the final and most crucial step. Does the reason actually explain the assertion? So let's apply our strategy here. Step 1, is the assertion true? Yes, absolutely. Step 2, is the reason true? Yes, it is. Now for the clincher. Step 3, does the reason correctly explain the assertion? For sure. The methods mentioned in R, rebuilding narratives, rejecting standard English, are the exact tools used to achieve the goal mentioned in A. It's a perfect link. And to leave you with a final thought, remember that postcolonialism isn't a dead subject stuck in the past. It's a living, breathing field of study. New ideas, like connecting the history of colonial exploitation to today's climate crisis, are constantly emerging. So keep reading, keep questioning, and you will be more than ready for this exam. Best of luck with your studies.